It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
You're connected. Please hold on. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you for coming on the show. Do you know this is your fifth time on our show?
I just saw that in the schedule. That's amazing. I mean, I always enjoy it. They go by fast.
They do. Well, we're very happy to have you back for your fifth appearance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I know you've got a new book to promote. Before we get to the book, though, I thought I would do this interview a little bit differently, if you don't mind. Because we've talked about your books and we've talked about different things, but I see a couple of talking points on here that they sent that it kind of maybe get to know the author a little bit personally first, and then we can pivot over to your book before we end the interview. The first one I got a kick out of, it says, you're a longtime resident of rural Virginia. And I happen to love Virginia. In fact, I was thinking of relocating to McLean, Virginia is one of my spots that we're talking about. But Ricketts is the name of the town?
Yeah, so, Ricketts is a fictional town in the state of Washington, which is where the book, part of the book takes place. It's in the southeastern corner of the state of Washington, and Travis Devine, who's a 620 man, has some things to do there. But we have a lake house in rural Virginia. We spend part of our time in northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., which is actually near McLean, which you were talking about.
Right.
And we spend most of the summers in southern Virginia, in a rural county, Bedford County, which is in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And my mom grew up in southwest Virginia on top of a mountain, the coal mining country that I've been to many times as a child, as an adult. So, the rural areas of Virginia I'm very well acquainted with. I've been all over the state and certainly have been to the very rural areas, particularly in the mountains. So when I was thinking about creating Ricketts, the town of Ricketts in the state of Washington, I knew I needed sort of an isolated place with a buffer, not a whole lot of people, and things could go on there that maybe would be under the radar. Well,
Virginia is a beautiful state, and that whole area I love. Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, it's just stunning. I've driven through there a few times, taken road trips, and I fall in love with it every time I go, just the rolling hills and the beautiful farms that people have there.
Yes, it is. It's lovely. It's a lovely landscape, and I never get tired of it. Seeing the Blue Ridge Mountains and all the trees and the lakes and all that. And then if you go east, you can go to the beaches and Virginia Beach and all that. So you get a lot. You get a lot of stuff in one state.
Yeah, it's true. So you really are a native Virginian, yeah?
I was born in Richmond. I grew up there. Went to school in Virginia, and then moved up to Northern Virginia to practice law in Washington, D.C. So, I've been here for the duration.
Okay. Well, that's right. I do remember you telling me that you were a lawyer prior to becoming a successful author. So were you still practicing law when you wrote Absolute Power?
I was, yeah. I'd spent 3 years of my life from 91 to 94 writing the novel, and I was practicing full-time as a litigator and just, grabbed in whatever time I could, early in the morning or late at night. That's why it took me 3 years to write that novel. So, but it really changed my life. I'd been writing for a long time up until that point and really couldn't make a living doing it. So that novel allowed me to become a full-time writer and change the trajectory of my life completely.
How did that novel get noticed by the people in Hollywood to sort of rocket your career?
Yeah, back then they had scouts that were at all the publishing firms, and the one that Time Warner bought mine, and somebody made a copy of it and mailed it out to producers in Hollywood who were looking for content, and that's where they had it. They had it long before it was even published, and started calling, and the film rights sold like a week after the book rights sold. So it was kind of a crazy time in my life, very surreal. Like people I never even knew were like throwing money at me from all different places, and I was like, okay, well, this is nice, but unexpected.
To be honest, I have not read the book, but I have seen the movie. with Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman. Great movie. How different is it?
Well, the main difference was that the Clint Eastwood character, the burglar, in the novel, he dies halfway through. So there's a young lawyer, Jack Graham, who really was involved from the get-go, and it takes up the action and the solving of the crime throughout the other half of the book. Well, back then, Clint did not die in any of his movies, so they had to figure out a way to keep him alive and get rid of the young lawyer, which they did, because, Clint calls the shots. So, and they did a good job. I understand it's not apples to apples. Film is very different from a book, and the choices they made from the book to the film, it worked for them. So it's okay. They paid a lot of money for it, and they had every right to do what they did.
Did he direct that?
He did. I went to some of the filming. So he'd set up the shot, then he would go into costume. He'd go in front of the camera, do the scene, come back, check his work on the shot, and if it was good enough, we'd move on to the next shot. He really was very efficient. I've been on a lot of film sets. And he was the most efficient director I've ever seen in my life. Usually one, at most two takes, and then move on.
Well, he's an amazing guy, and he's still going, and he's, well into his 90s now, right?
Yeah, he's 94 and just has a new film out, Juror Number 2, which I wanted to go see in the theater, but apparently Warner didn't release it in the theater, so you have to look it on a streamer platform. But yeah, I can't imagine at 94 directing a movie, because that's high octane. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of moving parts. So God bless him. He's up to that task.
Yeah, absolutely. And at 94, let's face it, most of us are not going to make it to 94. We hope we do, but
no.
The odds are not in our favor, certainly.
Yeah, and I don't think at 94, even if we made it that far, we'd be directing Hollywood films.
No, we'd probably be having someone push us around in a wheelchair, and we can stare at the sunset. I think
exactly, yes.
He's just doing amazing. So the new book, called To Die For, is part of the 620 Man, and I believe, let me think about this. 620 was a time on a train or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah, it was the 620 train that Travis Devine would take in from Westchester to Manhattan, where he worked on Wall Street. So he got the name, the 620 Man, from that, and that was the title of the first novel. Okay,
and this is the second book in the series?
No, this is actually the third. There's a book after the 620 Man called The Edge that took place in Maine, rural Maine, and where he picked up someone, I refer to her euphemistically as the girl on the train, who's trying to kill him. And she's still after him and to die for. And in this novel, he's assigned to go work in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest to guard a 12-year-old girl named Betsy Odom, whose parents just died, whose uncle, Danny Glass, is a criminal, and the federal government is prosecuting him. Glass wants to adopt Betsy. They have no idea why. They figure she's pretty important for some reason, so the feds want to protect her and keep her safe from him. So they bring Travis Devine out to act as her guard, her bodyguard, and he has no clue how to deal with a 12-year-old girl. It's not in his skill set. And he also finds out that he's working with some other agencies out there, that he's not really sure who is his enemy and who is his ally, because they seem to keep switching. And it comes down to he doesn't know who to trust out there. So it's a big challenge for him.
So why did you decide to go with a 12-year-old girl as a character? Is she pretty much the main character in this, or one of them?
Yeah, one of them. She has a lot of page time with Travis Devine. It was one way to enhance his character and also introduce an interesting character in her own right. But he had never had to deal with anyone like her before. When you bring a series character back, what you want to do is not just bring him back as he's always been and never changing. You want to evolve his character. And one of the ways to evolve his character is to make him meet up with and have to deal with different sorts of people that he's never dealt with before. And that was Betsy Odom, a 12-year-old girl. So in this novel, you get to see more of a softer side of Devine, not just the physical military guy with a special skill set. You need him to be fragile and vulnerable, and you need him working hard to get this young girl who's been through a lot of trauma to trust him. And it's not an easy task. So his character had to change. He had to show more of himself in this novel than he did in the previous two, which is a way for his character to evolve from book to book for the readers.
Okay, so you said this was book 3 in the series. Do you have an idea of how long this one's going to go, or is it just going to be until you run out of ideas?
Yeah, I think it's book to book. I never really plan out, 6, 7, 8 books of what I'm going to do. It's just a feel for, do I want to bring him back in something? Do I have a plot that sort of fits, his character, his wheelhouse. Those are the sorts of, deliberations I do when I'm thinking about bringing a character back. I think he has a lot more room to go. I mean, I think that I could write about Travis Devine for quite a few more books. But it all comes down to, do I have the interest? Do I want to bring him back? Do I think I can keep continuing to evolve his character in interesting ways? And if I can, you'll definitely see him again.
Do you find yourself thinking about your characters and the next book and the next plot at obscure times in your life? Like perhaps you get in the car and go to the store to buy something, and then all of a sudden it clicks and, I got to do that. Or do you really sit down in your office at, Tuesday morning at 9:00 and say, okay, ready, go? Are you able to shut your mind off to that, or is it constant?
It's constant. I mean, it's much more the former than the latter. I write pretty much every day. I don't have set hours to write or set pages or words to write, but I'm immersed in it all the time. So wherever I happen to be, something is always dawning on me, some epiphany, some revelation, some plot device that I can, because I don't turn it off. I compartmentalize. I can go to a party and sit there and entertain or be entertained, but at the same time, half my brain is thinking about, a chapter. My wife knows the signals, and I've been at parties where somebody's walked by, looked at me, and then gone over to my wife and said, is David okay? He looks like he's had a stroke. And my wife will glance over and go, nope, he's just finishing a chapter. Give him 10 minutes.
That's great. Well, I'm glad she knows, because sometimes people will interrupt you right in that sort of, stream of consciousness train. And you look like you're out in space somewhere. Exactly. And they don't understand it. But my wife certainly has. She knows it, when I'm thinking about something. She just turns around and walks out of the room, basically. But it's good. But, a lot of creatives are like that. I mean, I've interviewed everybody from filmmakers to musicians, songwriters, and it's not something that they can just switch off completely. Like you said, some can compartmentalize it, but it's just part of your being. It's part of your makeup that stream of consciousness is just going all the time. And I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. Back in the days before all this technology, when I was a more avid songwriter, I would get these ideas for songs while I was driving, and very inconvenient.
Right.
But what I used to do is I used to call, we had the flip phones back then, and I would call the house and get the machine and actually sing the song into the machine, so that when I got home I wouldn't forget
I love
it.
That. I love that's great. That's a great device. I love that.
Yeah, and it's it's low tech. I mean, now I could do the same thing with my smartphone on the record mode and just record it that way.
Yep.
But we didn't have it back then, so it was interesting.
Yeah, you do what you got to do, and you deal with what you have.
Exactly. There's something on here that I did want to bring up. Then we got to bring up Wish You Well. It says I'm just going to read this. It says you grew up as a reader, yet today's young people have so many distractions. Do you worry about the impact of social media on young minds?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I see that it's weakening your mind. It's younger people who are doom scrolling all the time on their phones. They're losing the ability to be able to read and comprehend long form narratives. Reading books, which takes time and attention and focus and concentration. And, I think social media is changing the way our brains operate and not making them stronger, making them weaker. And, I've always looked on reading books is like weightlifting for your brain. It just feeds it everything it needs. And if you don't do that, your brain is going to atrophy. And what's on social media anyway that's all that important? It's just there are bots on there that aren't actual people. There's a lot of disinformation, so you're going to spending your time reading lies, and just a lot of vitriol and negative stuff, and you get addicted to it, and then you've been on, and all of a sudden 8 hours have passed. I mean, a lot of people I know, their screen time comes up, and you've 14 hours of screen time today. I'm like, my God. You basically screen time and then you sleep. That's your day. Is that how you want to spend your life? So books just make you better, more empathetic, smarter, more sympathetic, more human. It raises your moral ability to deal with the world and how you deal with other people. And social media doesn't do any of that. So if I had a magic wand, I'd wave it and all the social media would go away. And somebody sent me a picture that was they'd taken from the 1990s. It was a street scene, just people on a bus, people in cars, people walking, people just living. And then at the bottom, the person wrote, "What don't you see?" And it finally occurred to me that nobody was holding a phone and looking at it. It was just they were going about their lives. They were talking to people. They were looking at stuff. They were browsing, a shop window. But they weren't looking at their phone. Now you go down the street and everywhere. If somebody doesn't have a phone out, you're thinking to yourself, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" Did somebody steal their phone? And that's sad. I mean, that's just really sad.
It is sad. Yeah, it was like I heard an interview one time with Paul McCartney when he was talking to Howard Stern, and he said they were talking about cigarette smoking because the Beatles' Get Back that came out from Disney, I don't know if you saw that, but they put a warning at the beginning of the movie saying, excessive smoking. And basically when you watch this thing, every single person in the room, the producers, all the tech guys, the Beatles themselves, everyone had a cigarette going, right?
Yeah.
And Paul was talking to Howard Stern about it, and he says, yeah, in those days it was weird if you didn't smoke. And now, of course, it's it's horrible and nobody wants to smoke, or should smoke, I should say.
Right.
But so what happens now? What happens next? I mean, the technology is changing so fast. Are smartphones just going to go away and they're going to put a chip in our brain so we can just blink our eyes and swipe the pages, or what's going to happen?
That sounds crazy, but I think it's totally plausible. I mean, these days anything is plausible. I can't imagine. I can never say the word never again, because every time I say that'll never happen, it actually happens. So you have companies out there doing these neural links and stuff where they're actually putting chips into people's heads. So why not? We'll just, like you said, we'll just blink or touch our nose and we'll make a call, or we can doom scroll, behind our eyeballs. So I mean, it's not the world I want to live in, but if people can make a buck off of it, it'll be coming down the road for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be the Matrix. Maybe not in our lifetime, but it's going that way. Okay, well, we just got a couple of minutes, so let's get Wish You Well Foundation in. Please give us like a quick overview of what your foundation does.
Yeah, so we've had it for about 25 years, and we fund literacy programs and initiatives across the country, and we've given out more money in the last 3 years than we've ever given out. I think COVID was part of it, but there's just a lot of need, and our goal is to eradicate illiteracy in the U.S. It's a big challenge. A lot of people are illiterate or read it below, appropriate levels, and what that does is it makes certain they can never achieve their potential economically. They're not going to get the good-paying job. They're not going to, be able to put a roof over their heads, feed their kids, raise a family appropriately. And also, again, there's that moral equivalent of, when you read novels, what happens is you're getting rid of your ignorance. You're reading about lots of different people, many of whom you'll never meet in your real life, from all sorts of different places and countries. You get to walk around in their skin. And then with your ignorance being banished, then the other half of that equation, intolerance, goes away, because you're not going to be afraid of people you've actually met on the pages. And it makes this a better society for everyone. So people can realize their economic potential, realize their moral potential, become better persons. So that's our job at the Wish You Well Foundation, and we'll continue to do that day after day.
Great. Can you give out the website?
It's for me, it's davidbaldacci.com. You can learn about me and my novels. And then it's wishyouwellfoundation.org. It'll tell you about some of the places we've funded, how you can volunteer in your community, and the state of literacy right now in the U.S.
Okay. So the latest book from David Baldacci is called To Die For. Has it been released?
It just came out Tuesday, so brand new.
Okay. Well, David, I'll let you go. I know you're kind of on a media tour today, right? How many interviews are you doing today?
Yeah. I think like 24, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, my God. 24? Oh, if I do 3 in a day, I'm done. I mean, from the other side of the chair. 24. Well, God bless you for that. Anyways, always a pleasure to have you on the show. You're welcome back anytime. And best of luck with the new book.
Thank you. Thank you very much.